It's ever since the incident in 2009 where some guy went on the ice during their game presentation, and then they locked it all down from that.
Even the building itself is such a, like the concourse is like in Montreal, like it's very narrow. So if you try to go from point A to point B in between periods, like, yeah, good luck to get there on time. So you have to like think ahead. All right, so welcome everybody to the latest episode of Game Day Glare, which today is a special episode because we have a guest. Well, first of all, my name is Ish. I'm, as usual, with Lance. And Lance, why don't you introduce us to our special guest?
So our special guest today is Shafique, who's the videographer for the Montreal Canadiens. Shafique has been there for 13 years, since 2011. And now the twist to this episode is Shafique was actually E's replacement, and this is the first time they're actually meeting each other. Now, they both heard a lot about each other throughout the years. As E put it in our pre-conversation, that he's the summer me, like in Seinfeld. But this is the first time that you guys are actually meeting, and Shafique took over when E left for Australia. So thanks for being here, Shafique. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure, It's really nice to meet you, E. Finally, after all these years.
Yeah, exactly. So far, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Whenever Shafique would mess up, I'd always tell him, E wouldn't do that. E wouldn't do that. Like, come on.
It's so true. Yeah. So true. Yeah.
Actually, it's funny because, like we were joking that the ENL studio thing, like where our office used to be, and it was almost going to be because of Sandrine, almost going to be EL and S. So it would have fit perfectly, actually.
There you go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Did Lance have the couch back in the day when you were there?
Yeah. The little red couch. Yeah.
Okay.
That was
a couple times.
Yeah. That was E's Christmas present back in 2007.
Yes.
Yeah. Shafique spent a lot of time on that couch too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So let's get this episode started. Yeah. And Shafique, so what we're going to ask you first is, why don't you tell everyone how you got into video and got into sports videography?
Yeah, sure. So I played competitive basketball up until I was probably around 15, 16 years old. I'm a basketball guy. I Toronto Raptors guy, would watch basketball all the time. And then I had an injury when I was 14 or 15 years old. I had a concussion. Basically stopped my play. I was never the same player that I was. And but the one thing I realized, like looking back on it, is that I never had like film. I never had anybody like film me play or anything like that. So I would tell people I'm nice, but like I have no proof to show that, So when I was 16, 17 going into college, I was trying to figure out like what am I going to do with my life, and I saw that there was nobody really like filming like athletes, college athletes, university athletes. So I thought that there was like a service there that I could tap into. So I created my company in 2008, Keys Productions, and I would just go to colleges all around Montreal. Like every single day I was there, man, like filming Champlain, Dawson, Vanier, Momo, Hunsik, like Limoilou, like Champlain, all these schools, and I would offer players like individual highlights and stuff like that.
So you were going there like not really, you weren't hired before you showed up. You just showed up and started filming.
Yeah. This was between 2008 and 2011, and this was before what it is now. Like now it's a thing, but before, like I would just go into these gyms, just be filming, and like kids would love it though. They'd be like, "Oh shoot, there's like a camera on the sidelines, like filming me," like. And then there was rivalries, like Vanier versus Dawson was like a big rivalry in college basketball, AAA here in Montreal. And with my videos over time, it created like a real. It wasn't real before the rivalry, but like people were looking forward to seeing like the next episode of like Vanier versus Dawson or the next volume, sort of thing. So I started off with that. I loved it. I made a business out of it. And then in 2011, the Montreal Canadiens was looking for a professional videographer, and at the time I thought it was crazy to apply. Like I still remember like the day that my mom, like I was living with my mom back then, and my mom would ask me, you know, how's your day, sort of thing, and I'd be like, oh, the Montreal Canadiens are hiring, and she's like, so, and I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, did you apply? And I was like, are you kidding me? The Montreal Canadiens, like, I'm just like some videographer here in Montreal just filming like college sports. Like, there's no way. And like, my mom's like, no, you gotta apply and this and that. And I applied, and next thing you know, I was a coworker of Lance's.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, it's great that you're telling people that you would go to games and just film highlights and offer to the athletes, because E and I get asked all the time is, how do you start? I mean, that's what we tell people. And to actually hear somebody that did that and it paid off, it shows that that's one of the best ways to go, because you probably learned so much in those gyms with white balance and lighting and, okay, what angles, where you don't learn that by reading textbooks or even watching YouTube. You learn it when you do it.
Whoa. Watching YouTube is very important.
No, but you always gain more experience.
But now I believe YouTube is a big tool. Like, if you think about it, I think YouTube was built in 2005 or 2007. One of those, like, it was the birth time. So when I was starting out, YouTube was like not what it is now. You know, Instagram didn't exist. Facebook, I think, came early 2000s, I guess. But basically, when I was just doing this out of the love of doing it. I wasn't doing it for likes. I wasn't doing it for views. Wasn't doing it because I was a content creator or anything like that. I was just like, I saw a need. I didn't have any tape of me playing basketball. And I was like, you know what? Maybe somebody else out there would like to have themselves filmed, you know? And then eventually it turned into like teams in colleges like would see me all the time, and like coaches would come up to me and be like, hey, do you want to create like a team highlight or something like that, team recap of the year of all the best highlights and stuff like that? And I'd be like, yeah. And then I started getting paid for it. Little by little, I would offer it to the players. And yeah, little business, nothing crazy, but I just did it for the love of basketball, and I thought there was a need. And now you see like companies like Ball is Life, Hoops Mixtape out in the States. Over here in Montreal, Hoops on the Rise came out I think there's a company called Game Point out right now, and they're all doing what I used to do, you know? So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's a great way to, you know, you basically created your own job, your own work, but also networking. You get to meet people and you get to build the portfolio as well, because I'm sure if you hadn't done that and you would have applied for the Canadiens and you would have just showed a bunch of like corporate videos that had nothing to do with sports, maybe you don't get the job. You know what I mean? Like, it's they say like luck is like preparation meets opportunity. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I truly believe in it. It's like, it's not about, because people always say like, of course, like you got that job because you knew that person or you met that person at the right time. But like, if you weren't ready at that time, it doesn't happen.
And in 2008, what I guess took like my vision to another level is in 2008, the Champlain College hosted the national championships of basketball, and the marketing guy of the CCAA, the Canadian Collegiate Athletic Association, saw my work and what I did in 2008 for Champlain. I filmed every game. Every game had a recap. Players had highlights, and they were seeing this like the next week, you know, like I was just pumping this content out and nobody's seen this before, you know. And he reached out to me and he's like, hey, we really liked your work. We'd like to fly you out to like Calgary in 2010 for the next nationals. And I was like, okay, cool. And then from there, 2010, I did 2010, 2011, I did 2011. And then it created that need. And then all of a sudden colleges are like, oh wow, this is cool. Like, and then they branched off to like football and other sports, volleyball and all of that, you know. So
Shafique, now, how was it when you transitioned from the basketball scene to like Habs TV? Like, how was your first days at the Bell Center? Like, I remember you coming in as this young kid and was just in awe. And, you know, there was a lot of
My suit.
your suits. Yeah, your suits. I'll post a picture of the Shafique with one of his suits. He's got this nice red suit one time at a Christmas party. I got a picture of me and him and two of our other coworkers. But how was that transition of working on your own and then all of a sudden working for a major sports team producing Habs TV content?
Yeah, so I think from the outside, the biggest thing that I learned or I saw was from the outside. There's a big difference. Like it's obviously more serious and like that kind of aspect. But what like video editing and storytelling and like camera work and stuff like that, it just translates, you know, especially if you've done sports before. So like, yes, hockey is a lot faster than basketball is and stuff like that. But I felt like I had a good sense of sports and movement and stuff like that. So the transition was pretty good. But the biggest thing, I guess, is the amount of people that I had to work with. You know, working with a marketing team and stuff like that, because I come from just having my business and like players, like I'd be with the college basketball players or university basketball players, coaches, but nobody is like really critiquing my work so much, you know. I've had critique before for sure, but now it's like you're in an environment where it's like a machine almost.
Yeah, there's a brand that you need to sort of fit in.
Yeah, exactly.
And approval processes too, right? It takes a long time. Like you think you're happy with the product, and then someone else sees it, and that wasn't their vision, or that wasn't marketing, or even your sponsor what they want. So
100%. So I think that was a big like eye opener for me. The first week or two, I think. Well, Lance knows for sure. But
you might have asked me one or two questions the first couple years. Let's say years, not weeks.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how the transition went. But overall, I felt like it was pretty good, and I was ready to take that step to the professional sports league.
Do you still do some basketball today or not?
Today, no. Like I have my business still, but I pick and choose what I want to like put my time into, sort of thing. But in 2018, when the Nationals came back to Quebec for basketball, long story short, there was a company that I used to work with, Primo Prod. Maybe you guys know of it, but they pretty much take care of all of football in Quebec, doing the same thing, like highlights, filming, that kind of stuff. So in 2018, he was like the guy taking care of that, and him and I have a really good relationship. So he brought me on to help him with the Nationals in 2018. So if there's anything in the future or whatever, like I'm always down to help out. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't even know what team is good anymore. I don't know what players are good. Like
you're out of the loop, eh, buddy? Too busy in the hockey rinks and the basketball courts.
Yeah. I'm out of the loop. But I remember the first year or two after I got hired by the Canadiens, I tried to still do it, you know? So I would work like 9 to 5. And then after work at the Bell Center, I would like drive to Vanier to catch a game at 7 or 8 p.m. or something, get home at like 11 p.m., be back at work. Like I did that for like a year, and I was like, no, it's just not worth it, you know? So I had to stop at a certain point.
And he doesn't drink coffee, so he was tired in those mornings. He drinks ice caps, but he doesn't drink coffee.
Big ice cap.
You're right. I kind of had to do the same thing when I started at Canadiens, because actually when I started was in 2006. Yeah, the season 06-07, basically, in the summer before that. And that job was actually, it wasn't full time. I was like freelancing. It was depending, because I was doing mostly like back then it was GDG, but like Evenco stuff, like the the concerts and stuff, and so it would just depend on how much concerts were coming. So sometimes there wasn't that, well, there was always work, but then with the social media and even just for the Jumbotron, there was more and more video needs, and they're like, yeah, he's pretty much here all the time, so let's try to make this a full-time thing. But all that to say that, like, at the beginning, like, just like you, I was at the Bell Center. I was doing TV shows at another place. I think I did a bit of RDS at some point, and it's all about my house, actually.
Like, I remember doing Habs TV my first year, and then the summer, like, just getting called in from time to time because it wasn't as consistent as it is now.
No, it's very different.
Yeah, it's a machine now. So
now, Shafique, you've gone from like Habs TV to doing like game presentation videos and that. What's the challenges in between doing like a Habs TV feature or compared to like an opener? Because people don't understand. We've all done openers. People don't understand the magnitude of having your content played in front of 21,000 people and what that's different to having a web video that you worked on that you probably could have spent the same amount of time on.
I think, my first time I did the opener was, I think it's my first season there, and I still remember like the pressure. I would say the biggest challenge was the pressure, but not necessarily the pressure that they put on you, but just pressure on myself. You want to perform well. It's going to be a lot of eyeballs are going to be watching this. So you want to do well, but you also have to follow the guidelines that they give you to follow for their vision, and then you have your vision, and then you're trying to like piece it together, sort of thing. But I would say it takes more time, more detail to go over a game opener than like a Habs TV piece, let's say. Just because there's a lot more. I would say there's a lot more like eyeballs on an opener than let's say a Habs TV piece, and even more people involved in marketing with their visions for the game opener rather than like a Habs TV piece,
Yeah, because it's their feature piece, and it has to be like on point with branding, and every player has to be in it and all that stuff.
The emotion that they want, the look that they want, the pacing of the video, all of that. But I wouldn't say one is more fun than the other. I love doing both. So
I remember the first time I did one. I was just the first time I made one. Before that, like fights and violence was a big no-no. Like any in any of the openers and things like that. But I did it. I just said like, let's just try it, and you'll see it's not that bad. And there was like a couple, like, it would be like, like photos, basically. It would be like, check, and, just like little glimpses, like you ease them into it, Because my point was like, well, you don't want to see fights in the video, but when there's a fight in the game, 20,000 people stand up. So,
it gives a emotion for sure.
Yeah,
especially in the playoffs. Like playoffs, I would say they show a lot more of that violence and grit to, I guess, like build that rivalry type of thing. But I would say fighting is a big part of evoking emotion in these game openers for sure.
And wasn't there a season where like you guys were doing like a different one, like almost like weekly or something? Because I remember like I would see them pop up like on Facebook and things, and they'd be like, So were those the actual opening?
No, they were. I think they were called like game openers. It was just whoever we were playing against.
Mm-hmm.
We would create like a minute and a half teaser sort of thing that would come on. I think before the opener.
Okay.
Before, I think it was before the opener, sort of to ease the crowd into it, sort of thing, and then boom, it would go into the game opener. Yeah. But I think I've done this so many times and so long that you sort of lose the sense of like wowness, like being at the Bell Center, and like I still remember the first opener I saw, and like being at the Bell Center and like having like all these fans like going crazy, and then you go on like Twitter and you see all the journalists like raving about the video and stuff like that. You're like, oh, but then like over the years you sort of like you do it again, you sort of like lose that sense of that. So I took a step back from doing it, just because like I just felt like I just felt like I needed to just take a step back to like to get back the feeling of being like, oh wow, like this is crazy, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
people don't understand too, right? The first time you watch your opener or your video on the scoreboard, you're excited, you're checking to see how everyone's reacting, but
yeah.
you're going to see that video 40 other times after that. So then
Even more when you're editing it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. No, but then you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Before games, you're running around, your video's playing, you're not even paying attention anymore, you know, and depending on who your rivalry is, fans are booing or cheering. So after the first game, you don't even know how to gauge that video anymore. But it's the first time you watch it in the stands, it's a cool experience. Like, you're like,
yeah,
wow.
I know. It's a once in a, like, it's not something that everybody gets to experience, you know, and I'm very grateful to be able to have done so many of them and experienced so many of them.
Can you take us through actually what your sort of day-to-day sort of implies? Like, what type of videos do you, because an opener, like we said, is like a once a year type of thing. So like, what's your actual workload? What do you do in a typical day?
Well, it's changed over the years, but now we really follow the team, let's say. So on a typical day, like a game day, let's say, in the morning, you're covering practice. So you're getting there around 8, 9 in the morning. They practice at 10:30, I want to say, sometimes 11. And you're setting up your camera and filming the practice. You get to go in the gym area if they're trainings, sort of stuff, to shoot some behind the scenes content, sometimes in the locker room, but primarily you're at the bench or around the arena filming the practice of them practicing. And then after the practice is done, they have media availabilities for the players and the coach. So you go in the room with all of the journalists, and we're usually paired up with a social person. Like, there's a social department that takes care of like the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube, like all of the posting content and stuff like that. So we're paired up with them. They're holding the mic, sort of thing, in those scrums. You know what I mean? The scrum, yeah. So they do those media availabilities, and then there's coach afterwards in the press conference room. And then after everything is done, practice, scrums, whatever, we go through the stuff that we filmed that morning of the practice, and we send like a short little practice cut of what we thought was the best content. If there's something like pressing, or like, for instance, if there was like a player we hadn't seen before because he was injured or something, and he comes out onto the bench to greet the players or something, then like we would cut that right away and send that to social right away to post, sort of thing. But if not, then we'll wait after the practice to send it. And then around 4 p.m., the guys start arriving to the game for a 7 p.m. game. So around 3, you start prepping your camera to figure out how you want to like film their arrivals, because you film their arrivals from different locations in the Bell Center. You film their arrivals. You film some gym stuff. You film some locker room stuff. Even some like hallway stuff. Sometimes you'll get them like interacting with other players, or checking out sticks, cutting sticks, meditating. Some of them are meditating. Some of them are like focusing. Like, I know Caden Primo, he has this routine with like a ball, and he like throws it on a wall without even looking at it, sort of thing. Like, he'll have his head like sort of like this, sort of thing. So you'll catch some of that stuff, and then we'll send it out to social. And then around 5:30, they have their meeting, closed door meeting with the coach. And then at 7 p.m. is the game. So you get to your spot around the Bell Center. There's designated areas for us to shoot. Usually it's mostly in the attacking zone twice throughout the game. And you film the game, any goals or anything like that, we send right away to social. Anything interesting, stuff like that. Sometimes there's like theme nights and stuff like that throughout the game. If there's anything relevant to that, then we send that too. And then the game is done. And if they win, we go into the locker room, film their celebration, coming in, high-fiving. We film the first star. And then we do the same thing, the scrums, coach, media availability. So it's a pretty long day on a game day here.
I was just gonna ask, what's your camera position during the games?
We're up against the glass.
In a corner, or
it's not necessarily a corner. It's like let's say the net is like right in front of me or just off to the left of me.
Okay.
He's a stairwell lurker. I see him going up and down the stairwells. Sometimes I'll get the wave during the game. He'll come down and say hi to me. But you guys move around quite a bit during the game.
Yeah. Well, I try to. I try to, like, every TV timeout, I try to get up and move around. I think we have like 2 or 3. No, hold on. 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we have 4 places that we can like circulate around. And every TV timeout, I try to like just get different angles, rather than just sitting in one spot for the whole period, sort of thing.
And when you say like when there's a goal, you send it right away. Do you actually have to go back to like a room where your computer is, or you just do it on the spot there?
Not necessarily right that minute, but at the end of that period, we'll send it. And then usually they'll use that to promote like the second period or something like that,
Shafique, we get asked quite a bit too, is people don't understand. They say, oh, I want a media pass. I want to go and film for the Canadiens. And we always tell them, like, no, you got to work for somebody, because even at these games, no one has access where you can go up and down the stairs unless you have credentials. And basically the only guys going up and down the stairs are you guys or the visiting team, nobody else.
Yeah. Or popcorn. Yeah.
Yes, popcorn. So we try and tell people, like, you got to reach out, you got to get a media pass. And there isn't many, especially the Bell Center, there's not many places for cameras to go. And like, it's challenging for you guys too sometimes to get to your spots and to get those angles. And
yeah, and not every arena is different. Like, I've been on the road and like there's some arenas that have a lot more flexibility, I would say, for the videographers. Like, some people will talk to and they're like, oh yeah, you could film from anywhere. And we're like, really? And they're like, yeah, any pick a spot and you could film there. And then there's some spots where like Toronto, for instance. Toronto is like one of the most like locked down, strict arenas to like film, like you have to just sit in that one spot that they designated you to film in, and that's it. Otherwise, like,
it's ever since the incident in 2009 where some guy went on the ice during their game presentation, and then they locked it all down from there.
Even the building itself is such a, like, the concourse is like, in Montreal, like it's very narrow.
Yeah.
So if you try to go from point A to point B in between periods, like, good luck to get there on time. So you have to like think ahead.
Yeah, in between periods. So I usually try to get to my seat like maybe with 5 minutes left on the clock, sort of thing. So it's not so crazy. And like, obviously, like leaving with like 30 seconds left of the game to go to another spot, it's like not ideal at all, because like everybody is up getting their food or drinks.
So your day at home compared to on the road, it's quite different, or it's I know it's a very similar routine for the guys, but for you it's a bit different. No, can you talk about that a bit? What it's like?
On the road, for game days, it's pretty much the same, because they do practices and then they have the game, and like NHL players are like very like they have to take their nap at like 3 or something like that, or 2, could be in between there, but they show up at the rink at 4, let's say, so you have your practice before and then you have your game. But on off game days, depending on what content we're filming and stuff like that, like for instance this past season, we created like a mini short documentary series, and so you got to go and get the city shots. You got to go and get some B-roll, to help tell the story of where you are. Sometimes we'll film like one-on-ones with players and stuff like that, and they don't have time to do it during games or game days, let's say. So it's on those off days that we spend like 30 minutes, an hour with the player, to get that content to help tell that story. But compared to home and game on a game day, it's pretty much the same.
What kind of gear are you bringing in your bag on these travel trips? Like, you packing light, or you got like a couple cameras with you? What are you guys bringing?
We each have our own camera. We have 2 FX3s and 2 FX6s, and I carry a FX6. We have like a travel bag that's sort of like a luggage too, and you can put it on your back, so it's pretty efficient with running gun type of scenarios. So we have the camera, we have the mic, monopod for sure. I traveled with like a little dinky like tripod, like lightweight tripod to get like establishing shots and stuff like that. And depending on the road trip, if it's a long road trip, I'll bring a gimbal, like a Ronin. If it's like a one-off game or something like that, I wouldn't bring the gimbal. And that's pretty much it, I think.
Actually, I'll give some insight here, because E probably doesn't know this, but so Shafique maxes out his gimbal, because I seen him with his FX6 on that gimbal, and he's like pushing the limits of that weight limit. It's not easy. I see him struggling sometimes. It's heavy, man. It's a heavy camera on that gimbal. What's the challenges of using that bad boy?
I would say just balancing it every time. It always gives me an anxiety attack before I before I try to set that thing up. But once it's balanced and everything's good, then it works efficiently. It's just, it can get a little tiring on the shoulder a bit, but
And do you use the gimbal for like a specific type of content?
Yeah, so I like to use them for arrival shots, just to have that movement with them arriving. Like, I'll track back with them or something like that. For establishing shots, it's really good. You know, just a simple tilt up, pan type thing. The gimbal keeps it really steady, you know, rather than carrying like a big tripod, you know, which I don't have room for. So the gimbal helps with that. And anything like walk and talks sort of thing, you know, I would use it. However, one time, like, I wouldn't use a gimbal. Like, this is my own personal thing, because like technology can mess up, you know. But like, so I had a story. I was in Vegas, I think, with Nick for All-Star, and I was like, oh, I'll do a walk and talk with Nick with like the gimbal or whatever, and like, the gimbal just decided to like act up. And I'm sure you both have had those moments with the gimbal where it just decides to just do its own thing, spin on its head and like go crazy. And so like, I had that, and ever since then I was like, never again. Like, when it's something that's like a once in a lifetime thing, I won't bring the gimbal with me. I'll just handheld with it, you know, so that I don't miss the opportunity of like getting good content, and like also like your equipment just breaking just because it decides to like go crazy. But I don't even know why the gimbals do that, but like, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But like Ronin hasn't done anything to fix that issue. But yeah, anyways,
It just goes in that death spiral for a bit, and your client's looking at you, or the athlete's looking at you, and you're like, oh, don't worry, hang on, I'm just going to reset it, and does it again, and you just slide the camera off, and you start using it handheld after that.
Yeah. So ever since then, I was like, never again, man. So a lot of times I'll be handheld, like if I'm like with a player doing one-on-one type stuff.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the whole, you know, day-to-day stuff, like, what's the off-season like? What do you guys do during that time?
Yeah, so the NHL is a machine, man. Like, it never stops, right? So the end of the season, like this season, if you don't make the playoffs, you have a little downtime in April, early May, but then combine starts, the NHL combine starts. And then end of June is draft. And then first week of July is development camp, you know, and it just keeps on running. And then after that is rookie camp. And then next thing you know, you're in training camp and the golf tournament. It's like, it never stops. Like, if you do playoffs, like that 1 year, well, 2021, when we made the Stanley Cup finals, we finished in like July, didn't we, or something like that? But then the NHL, I think, pushed the season a little bit to October. So it's like you have like 1 month or two, and then you're right back into another season. So the off season is it's still pretty busy. Yeah, it never stops.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
well, especially these days. But yeah,
Especially with social media and YouTube becoming what it is, and Instagram and all that stuff. Yeah.
So Shaft, let's talk about, since you've done 13 years now, what's one of your most memorable moments at the Canadiens?
There's a few. I remember I think it was my first 3 years or something. I was assigned like one of the biggest projects I've ever done. It was a Hall of Fame movie. You remember this, Lance?
Yeah, it was with all my footage that I had filmed.
Yeah, there was a bunch of your footage. There was like a bunch of someone else's footage, and like, anyways, I was just given this task. I forget how long it was. Was it like an hour, 45 minutes or something like that?
Something like that. I just remember having a crazy aspect ratio. Like it was like 3 movie screens put together to make this one screen. So it had to all be done in After Effects, and it was a big project.
It was a crazy like first big project for me, and like obviously I spoke about pressure before, and like I felt the pressure with that, and like I had to go through all of this footage that I was unfamiliarized because I didn't film anything of it, and then like I had this voiceover that then I had to match the footage, and it was like a movie I had to like create, and like the deadline was like 3 months or something like that. It was like at the I remember that. I was like, man, this is insane. And like, yeah, we put in so much hours, so much time. We hired an external guy, After Effects guru, because they needed like special effects and the aspect ratios or something like that. Anyways, we brought him in, and I was thankful for that because like he helped me a lot. I learned a lot from that guy, like on the After Effects side of things. And so that was like one of the most memorable parts of my career. But more recently would be, I would say, the bubble season in 2020, 2021. It was a season where like 50 of us, so trainers, therapists, players, coaches, and two video guys got to follow the team day in and day out. It was just us. We were tested every single day. But just the journey of that season, it was like a movie almost. Like, if you remember, like in that season, we were struggling in the beginning. And then like, as like the playoffs were about to start, like we just like squeezed in to the playoffs. And that year was special too, because they made the North Division. So we would just be playing like Canadian teams all year and flying out to like Calgary 4 times, like Edmonton and Ottawa and all that stuff. And but it was really rewarding because like day in and day out, you got to really see the lifestyle of NHL like never before, sort of thing. Like obviously we've all been around it, but like to be in it like 24/7, like it was pretty cool. And at the end of it, when they won versus Vegas, Game 6, on Saint Jean Baptiste, like it was just like I was saying, it was like a movie. Like it was like everything like lined up, and I was able to take the team photo. Usually it's the photographer that does it, but because it was a bubble, it was the videographer that worked that game that got to take the photo of the team, and it was a good memory, and I have it up in my room here.
nice.
Everyone signed it for you.
Almost every player signed it for me, and I remember I was so stressed taking this photo because
Yeah, imagine.
I do landscape photography,
Okay.
so like
You knew what you were doing, because I would have been petrified.
ish. Yeah, I knew what I was doing, but like at the same time, this was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like I can go to this mountain and shoot this mountain 200 times if I wanted to, if I didn't like it. This was like a once in a lifetime. You have like 1 minute to take the photo, and then they all like celebrate. And like I remember like just when you know something, but like you start to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
Like. So I was just like, should I shoot this at f8, f5.6? Like, what if this guy in the back is not like,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like it's an official NHL photo that they're gonna use. It's in history. So anyways, it turned out great. Everybody was like in focus. Everybody's eyes were open. Like I was just like thrilled about that.
Everybody waited forever to take that photo, Shafique. That's why they were ready. Those guys are ready. It's funny. I actually remember seeing you from my angle, and you were walking across the ice, and I was like, "Where the hell is this guy going?" Because a normal situation it'd be the team photographer.
Yeah. Actually, there'd probably be a couple of photographers out there like for that magnitude of like like the Canadiens hadn't won that round in like forever, like what feels like forever, so it was a big history thing, and I took pride in that, like it motivated me. I was like, okay, like this happened, like it's a pretty big deal.
Well, what's cool about that photo too, it's the Western Conference trophy, so technically that was the first time the Canadiens ever won that trophy, and now the Canadiens have won every trophy in the NHL. So it was a really historical moment. And
100%.
That season, I remember like Shafique and I would talk, and we weren't allowed to be in the same section. So I'm in 119 and he'd come down to 120, and we chit chat with our masks on, and we made sure, and they'd watch us. Hey, remember we get texts, "Hey, you're too close. You're too close." He used to call me and say he wasn't allowed to get gas. He wasn't allowed at the store.
Yeah, we weren't allowed like anywhere, like the general public wasn't allowed to do a lot of things, but even us wasn't allowed to do even more, because like if we were to get sick or we were to get COVID and then you pass it on to one of our star players and then they're out, I think it was like 14 days, right? The quarantine back then. Like imagine being out 2 weeks, like without like your star player, like it could be messy. So, but I remember that night too, they locked down the Bell Center because it was just insane outside, like with the fans and stuff like that. Like they locked down like the players weren't able to go out because it would just be like insane traffic to get out, So I remember going to the locker room and they were all just in the locker room, just like hanging out, just chilling.
That season, do you think you grew the most that season? Because like if you had technical difficulty that season, you're on your own. No one was able to help you. You had no backup. So
100%. That season helped me more than any other season, because on a day-to-day, like you were mentioning before, you're not always with your camera, but that season I was always with my camera. Every single day I'm filming, every day, for hours every day. Whereas like now, like if it's not a game day, it doesn't mean that I have a camera in my hand, so like I learned a lot, learned angles a lot, learned speed a lot. Like I never used 120 speed before 2020, 2021, and I just learned that like how dramatic it can make a shot, that 120 speed, of a like player coming right up to you, looking right into your lens, like how dramatic that shot is. Like before then I never used 120, so I learned about speed. And I think I just grew too, because you would be editing almost every single day too, so picking up on little things that like, oh, this shot is not that good, I'll get a better shot next time, or this angle wasn't that good.
Speaking of frame rates, actually, how do you handle that? Do you always film everything at 120 now, or do you sort of go from one to the other depending on the content that you're shooting?
Personally, I love shooting fast sports in 24. Like personally,
we have this debate all the time.
But I do that because like I feel like that's a documentarian, like I love documentaries, and like I love working on them and stuff like that, and I feel like that 24 frame rate just like makes it so cinematic, as we all know. But I'll shoot 60 though too, like just so that I have some slow-mo and stuff like that. 120, I would push that for like beauty shots and stuff like that, like in a locker room or in the gym or something like that. But I don't know, I like especially hockey, because it's so fast. At 24 you see like the blur and everything, and it's just like it looks like they're like just zooming through that ice, like. But yeah, I would say 24, 60 most most games I would shoot 60.
So what's your workaround then when you shoot something 24 and they're like, hey, we want this in slow motion?
I don't know, man.
You know, but in Premiere you can go and like interpret footage and stuff, but it's not the same.
Yeah, you could do the optical flow and stuff like that. There's even this app called Topaz or something like that.
Oh,
and you could even you could do some funky stuff with that. Like you could take a 30 frame and stretch it to a 120. Obviously, it won't look as natural as like a 120, but it'll still slow it down for sure.
well, apparently now Adobe's coming up with like a
Generative fill.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you'll be able to do that with video now. So like,
Oh wow,
you can, add a window or whatever, and it's supposedly gonna look all normal in your shot. And same thing, if your clip is too short, you're supposed to be able to make it longer, and it will just fill in those frames. Very curious to see how that's gonna
How that's gonna work.
that'd be cool though. Like in a sense of like I'm just thinking like highlights wise, like if you were to like remove a player sort of thing off of the ice and then like put him back or something.
Well, that's the idea. Like it,
that would be cool.
Basically taking hours of masking, just like that.
Rotoscoping, masking,
all that fun stuff, eh, guys?
Yeah, exactly.
Headache, yeah.
Shafique, what are some of the challenges then? Like we've talked about a lot of good stuff now. What are the challenges that people don't understand, or that a challenge that you have sometimes, something that you struggle with that people wouldn't think that you struggle with, considering you're a professional videographer?
I touched on it a bit before, but I would just say pressure is a challenge. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to be the best that I can be. Sometimes I would look at videos and stuff like that and people would love it, but like internally me, I'm like, I wish I would have done something. I'm just hard on myself naturally, so I would say the challenge is pressure. But another big challenge that I don't think a lot of people take into account is just how long these days are, like especially on the road and on game days. Like these days are long, and you have to be locked in, you have to be focused. And I think focus is a challenge, to, especially in a game. Like I sometimes I would be like, I'd be filming and I'd be like, how did I miss this? It's like your mind just like drifts somewhere and you're like, oh, okay. Like I'm here, like, so focus is a challenge, especially when you're doing something over and over and over again. And also I would say just to keep up with the trends and stuff is a challenge, because I feel like we're in a world that is just like developing faster than like ever, I guess, in time. So it's like you buy a gimbal today, tomorrow there's a new one, better one, and you just spent $2,000, it's like, so keeping up with the trends and the equipment and stuff like that is also a challenge.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, with the trends, like, do you put pressure on yourself to to be up to scratch with what's going on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that? Like, is there like a fear of being the old guy in the room who's been left behind and stuck in his own ways and things like that?
Yeah, but also I think it's more of like FOMO. More FOMO than being the old guy stuck in his ways, because it's like I don't like to waste people's time or my time, and I don't like to waste the opportunity. So it's like fear of missing out, of like, oh, we could have done this if we would have known this, sort of thing. So that's the perspective that I take with that.
It's funny to hear you say that Shafique's the old guy now, though, because I remember when he came in, he was the youngest guy. He was 10 years younger than me,
Yeah. I came in as a 22-year-old kid. Yeah, crazy, man. Insane.
We learned a lot from each other. I learned stuff. I was at the age where I was 30 and I was like seeing this 22-year-old come in and I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot what it was like when I was 22.
I love that moment where you're always the youngest every job you go to, and then one day you look around, you're the oldest in the room, and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah, but I will say though that when I was first hired, and I tell people this now, because like people who ask like, what's it like working for a professional sports team, Montreal Canadiens, that stuff. And back then when I first started, I was the youngest but also in the locker room, I was the youngest. You know, like we had Markov, we had Plecky, we had Hal Gill, we had Brian Giunta, we had a whole bunch of guys that I'm forgetting right now, but like they were all older, like late 20s, early 30s. And now I'm the old guy in the locker room, but there's kids in the locker room. And like back then, they weren't, I guess, a fan of cameras, or they didn't understand it because social media wasn't what it is now, you know, in 2011, you know. Whereas now, the kids in a room, they get it. They grew up with a phone. They grew up on Instagram. And so I love it right now. Like it's a lot better time now than it was before. And it's just because of that adjustment with more familiarity of like being around a camera.
Oh, I totally agree. It's so much easier now to deal with players from that perspective. Like they're not intimidated by the camera. They're not trying to run away from it. And even like to the point where I was talking to, I've done some work with the Carabins, the Montreal University football team.
Yep.
And I was talking to the guy there. He was saying how the players, like if you ask them like, you know, they've got this big game coming and some TV stations like, you know, on the news, they want to do like they want one of the players to show up and do like a 3-minute interview or something like that. No one wants to do it. Like they don't care about TV at all. But if they're doing any type of shoot around the school or wherever it is that has like cameras that, you know, gonna end up like on Instagram doing like these little promo clips, they're all in. Like they all want to do it.
They want to be on TikTok, not on the news, right?
Yeah. They couldn't care less about TV, but if it's social media, they're in. No, it's funny. It's changed a lot because we used to. Because I remember when I was the Canadiens, like from a PR's perspective, like if a media was trying to get in and get accredited, if you're just doing online stuff, it was a hard no. Like they couldn't care less.
So Shafique, on the flip side, what's the most rewarding part about being a videographer for the Habs for this long? Besides working with me and seeing me every now and then. Now we used to work daily together, but now it's a little
price to pay.
That's it. That's it.
Price to pay. Rewarding is, I guess, just taking pride in the work that I've done. Like looking back, like it's a big portfolio that I've been able to produce. But also I'm able to be on the road and I'm able to work for a professional sports company. So I don't take that for granted. It's very rewarding to have this as my profession. And also like the comments, I guess, that you get from fans now on social media, like you post a video and like on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, like people are having conversations in the comments, you know, and I guess that's rewarding when you get good comments. Sometimes there's left field comments there, like bring this player, or, like it has nothing to do with the video, but yeah, I would just say like just being able to continue to do what I'm doing is rewarding, you know.
Yeah, and I think like, and I'd be curious to like Lance as well, like know what your answer to that question is, because like for me, I think it was like the idea that it's this team that I've been watching since I was like 5 or 6, and that all my friends are following, and that like we've all sort of been looking up to, and here I am being part of it and being responsible for like a small part of the brand and what's sort of shown to the public and stuff, and being able to sort of add my own style and my own ideas into that was like a huge responsibility. And also like, you know, it's way more exciting to work on something that you know that you and all your friends care about than to work on something that you're just doing for the money or whatever.
It's definitely like a conversation piece, right? Like when I don't know, with my group of friends and that, whenever we went somewhere, it was like, oh, he works for the Montreal Canadiens, and everyone was always intrigued with that. And you do have a sense of pride because, you know, as we all know, we have 24 Stanley Cups and everyone talks about that. But when you see your work on display, like I remember I used to see some of my TV commercial on display, and I'd always catch myself checking my commercial because I was looking for spelling mistakes to make sure there was no spelling mistakes. But you'd be watching that and your friends would be like, oh, did you make that? Or I remember like my son only, like I spent half my life, right, working for the Montreal Canadiens. So my son only knows me working for the Canadiens.
Yeah.
And I remember when he was a little boy, he used to ask other people that we'd meet, oh, what hockey team do you work for? He just assumed everybody worked for a hockey team because every Christmas he'd go skate at the Bell Center. He'd get to meet some of the players. And for him, that was just the norm. He didn't realize that there was life outside of hockey.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that sense of pride, like you're part of a great organization and you always have to make sure you bring your A game.
Yeah, I think it's like what E touched on, responsibility and stuff. I'm rewarded in the sense of that my profession allows me to like continue to like be better and continues to like motivate me, to be better. I find that's a big reward, that not everybody gets to say that they have or can do or.
No, I totally agree. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I wasn't, like, I used to work in television. And when I moved away from it, like, because I, like, so many people, if you're working at like a broadcast, like a CBC or something like that, like the older guys, like, and I was in my early 20s, and then you get the older guys who've been doing it for like 12, 15 years, and they're just so set in their ways, and they're just, complaining about stuff, and then complaining about things changing, and now they need to do more, and it's just like, and I liked much more the idea of being in an environment where things are constantly evolving and changing. And
yeah, you're adapting.
That's keeps you excited about work, basically.
That complaining and the change still happens, obviously, anywhere you work. But like, how does it work for you guys, Shafique, when you're producing content? Like, what's your input nowadays on when you guys are doing feature pieces and stuff like that? Like, obviously marketing plays a big role, but they involve you guys more now in the process. So how does that aspect of your job play out?
Usually like when we get assignments and stuff like that, we get like a brief, I guess, of like the vision that marketing or whoever is requesting this. Because now we have different departments. We have like foundation department. We have like the building department, like the Bell Center department. We have social. We have like there's many. There's Tricola Sport, which is like the merchandise department. So depending on where these departments are the request is coming from, they sort of like give like a little bit of like we're thinking this sort of thing. And so like I would just like build the video of like my vision, but also respecting their vision, obviously, as like a foundation sort of thing. And then like I would just build off of that, create my own look and feel to it, and then I'll send it out for approval or comments, and if they like it, great. If they don't, then they'll give me like some tweak comments, stuff like that. I'll go back to the video, tweak it up, and that's that. I would say openers take a little bit more back and forth in collaboration than like Habs TV pieces or foundation pieces and stuff like that. I've been doing this for so long, I sort of understand what like goes into like a Habs TV piece or like a foundation piece and stuff like that. And also have the work to go back to reference what we've done in the past to doing it now. But openers, it's it's a big collaboration, like almost everybody in marketing or in higher management is looking at this. So there's more back and forth, but it's pretty much the same thing. They give like a foundation of where they want to take this, and then I try to take them to that destination. And then if they're not happy with that, where I drop them off, then we'll go somewhere else, sort of thing,
I remember like sometimes I would do projects, and depending on the project or who you worked with, you kind of know who you're editing for, right? Or who's going to approve it. So you kind of like, okay, so-and-so is approving this one. They like this kind of style. I'm going to try and make it this kind of style so they can approve it. You still put your creativity in, but you still got to respect where they're going. And then some people don't give you much information and you just go with it. So you like that creative process more, or would you rather something more fundamental, something they lay out for you?
I like the creativity. Like for instance, it's like this short documentary that we started this year. It was pretty much create a story sort of thing, and I was able to create the base of it, the intro, and what I thought worked for pacing wise, and they ended up liking it, and then it became like the standard, or tried to be the standard of every episode moving forward. So I like a bit of both, you know, giving creative input, and then also just giving like a foundation sort of thing, you know, because I feel like as a creative, like it's hard sometimes, like every single day to think of something new, you know, every single day thinking of something new and new and new and new. So sometimes it sort of breaks that cycle when somebody gives their creative approach sometimes, and they're like, this is where we'd like to start with, and then you can build off of that, rather than you brainstorming alone sort of thing and then coming up with something every single time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also there's another cycle, which is that it's always a loop, a 1 year loop, basically. So do you feel like, is it rough sometimes to like, oh, all right, here we go. I'm doing, it's because it's, you know, there's videos that are like once a year. So it's like, all right, now I got to do this video that I've done 12 times before. And then I got to do this other one that I have to, like, is that something that you get tired of, or not really? Because every year is different. Every year is new.
Personally, myself, I always try to like do something different, come with a different approach, either in an editing style or in a story style, or music, like soundscapes, audio, like trying different things. So like I wouldn't necessarily say like I'm like, oh, here we go again, this video that I've done 12 times sort of thing. But I try to look at it as like, oh, this is like another opportunity, you know, to become better. Because like if in my mind, like if you can do the same thing over and over, but every single time is different, or is better, let's say, and that means you as a video editor, videographer, you're doing something right, because you're continuously evolving. And especially with the times that we're in now, where like all these trends are changing every year. So it's like, it's cool to go back to 2011 and see what I've done in 2011 and compare it to what I'm doing now in 2024, you know?
Yeah.
You see the evolution of it.
Yeah, 100%.
And
yeah.
So now we'll switch topics a bit, but working for the Bell Center, or the Canadiens, Group CH, there are opportunities where you're filming other stuff, not just hockey, and you get to experience other cool stuff. So one of those things is the festivals. Now, what's the difference between filming festivals and filming hockey? Now, we'll just say for listeners who don't know, like festivals are like Osheaga, Ilsonic, used to be Heavy MTL, stuff like that. So now I remember like back in the day, I brought Shafique. Shafique helped me. We did one time we did 22 videos live on site from Osheaga. And Shafique had one main concern that weekend. I'm filming the weekend, okay, guys? I don't care what we're filming. I'm filming the weekend. But so what's it like filming like Osheaga compared to hockey, and how that's even grown too, right?
I get told I look like the Weeknd's dad in my YouTube.
I can see it a little bit.
That's how I knew I was old, because I used to get, you know, you look like that guy, you look like that guy, and now it's like you look like that guy's dad.
The dad. It's just different in the sense of like, okay, basketball, I know what I'm doing. Hockey, I know what I'm doing. Artists, I'm not as familiar with shooting concerts or whatever, so I think there's a lot more preparation, I guess, to do it, because you're not doing it consistently throughout the year. Whereas like hockey, it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Like they're going to do practice and they're going to do game. And then there's a shoot on Thursday at Tim Hortons, sponsor stuff, this and that, you know? But concerts, it's like, I think just a lot of preparation and a lot of, I remember shooting Osheaga, and like, I would just have like a notebook, sort of like writing down shot lists and stuff like that of like what I wanted to get and stuff like that, because there's so much that you can capture at festivals, you know, and you got to understand like the the end goal, the purpose. Like, are you doing a recap video? Is it just individual artists? Is it, because all of that will play into like the final edit and deliverables sort of thing. But last year, I was able to interview various artists in all three festivals, Osheaga, Ilsonic, and Lasso. But it was a pretty simple setup. It was just 2 camera setup. I actually met like people from Much Music, so that was kind of cool because like I grew up watching Much Music, you know, like watching the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or whatever, you know, like on Much Music, and I was like, oh shoot, Much Music is here, you know, like, and like my setup wasn't any different than theirs, you know, so it's like, this is kind of cool, like, you know, like it's that realization. I think like I mentioned early in our interview, like what was the biggest difference from the outside? You're like, oh my God, Much Music is like such a big like production. So, and like this could be any company, not just Much Music, but like from the outside, you're thinking like, oh, it's so big. And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, well, they're using a different camera or a different setup than I would do. Or like, I thought that this was better, but maybe this is better, you know, sort of thing. So anyways, they were there. And so we just shot interviews like for Osheaga is 3 days. Ilsonic is 2, Lasso is 2. So for those full days, you're shooting from like 9 in the morning until 5, let's say. But like not like hour after hour. Sometimes like they would like filter out. And I like that experience because you got to see so many different personalities. But also understanding the end goal is like, this is not for recap. You're not having to like run out, shoot crowd, get these like little thematic, like with the what's it called, Ferris wheel, and like all, like you don't have to get like the sponsorships of food, and because I know people that have that are there to do that, and I'm like, man, I don't know how you do it, because like you're like running all over the place. You're shooting an interview here, and then you got to run and get this, and then you got to run and get that. Then you got to be at this, and like all the stages are far away from each other. So then you got to get onto the golf cart, and then you got to.
So, like, because the year that we did it, where we did all those videos, that's kind of what we did. We had Peter, who was one of our guys. He was doing the interviews, and Shafique and I were tag teaming. We were basically made a list. Okay, we're interviewing this guy. Let's go get his show. One of us would go get the show. One of us would be editing something. We'd be running all over the place. We pulled it off, but man, we were exhausted after. So it's nice when you're just doing that one job and you know exactly what you're doing. When you're doing interviews, stories, and recaps at the same time, it's too much. It's too much.
That's where that shot list comes in, you know, like, because otherwise you'll get lost. And
I found it interesting you said though about Much Music, because I catch myself doing what you said. Every time you see other people, you always check out their gear, and you're like, you want to see if your gear is relevant or what they're using. Oh, maybe they have it set up a different way. And when I was younger, I wouldn't say anything. I would just lurk and just check it out. Now I'll go up to people and I'll talk and I'll be like, oh, how come you're using that monitor? How come you're doing this? And you kind of get to see why other people are doing stuff or what their thought process is behind it. And I feel like that helps you grow too, right? Checking out other people's rigs.
100%. Networking for sure. 100%.
I've seen the flip side of that as well, where like you see stuff on TV and you imagine that it's like big production and there's like, it's a team of 4 or 5 people, whatever, that show up, especially like to press conferences and, you know, announcements and things like that. Like it'd be just like the journalist by himself, just putting the camera on the tripod, just like filming himself. And I'd be like, do you want me to check like for your framing? Just like, I just felt bad.
Yeah. I've seen that too. Yeah.
Especially when they're traveling, it's like, there's no budgets. And
when I was in Utah, I stopped by the NCAA to watch one of the open practices, and there was a reporter, and he was doing everything by himself. And I walked by, and he was struggling checking his focus. So I said, "You need a hand?" And I just checked his focus fast for him. I said, "Okay, you're good." And he had to do it all remotely. He's talking to someone in his ear. They're telling when he's on, and he's just live feed, and they're going to cut to him any second. And it's like, wow,
it's
tough.
It's impressive though.
People would be surprised how many journalists like just work by themselves now these days doing that. And you have to have like a base sort of knowledge of editing, and you just cut these little packages and stuff. And it's it used to be like 5 people.
I don't know. I see it too. I see it at NHL games too. There's journalists in there filming their hits or whatever it's called alone. You know, they'll have their cell phone up with like which is crazy to me, like cell phone going on to broadcast TV. Like they'll have like a small little monopod, tripod with their cell phone hooked up with a real like mic, and like they'll just be standing in front of it and like be talking. I'm like, damn.
I've seen a lot in UFC actually, because they basically often to afford to go to the event, but also to make actually make money. They're working for different outlets. So let's say the guy's from London, he'll be working for like 2 or 3 newspapers and the website and a this and a that. So he's there and he's like doing all these takes and finishing with a different sort of signing off, and then he's writing an article for another place, and then it's like, Jesus, this is full on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But Shafique, look, we were talking the other day when the season ended, right? You were doing live streaming right from the locker room, and that's something new that you guys are doing now. So why don't you talk about that a bit? Because I'm sure a lot of listeners don't know how that process works.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we've been doing this for 2 years now, and there's a piece of equipment called YOLO box, and there's a YOLO box, and then there's a YOLO box mini, and so we just basically have this. It's like a monitor that you attach HDMI to your camera, and you're just that you could and a good like Wi-Fi connection, or we have SIM cards so that we don't have that much interruption, sort of thing, and you could broadcast to the world whatever you're filming, you know, which is like to think that like where we started at in like 2011 till like now, it's like it's crazy. Like what's next 5 years is going to be like, you know, but basically you select like where you want to broadcast, so like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I think our social media guy fixed up a way to make it onto like restream, so you don't have to select like every single app. You just hit restream, and then them on the other side are able to like specify where it goes, sort of thing. And it hooks into your audio of your camera. You have a mic, whatever, and like that's how we're doing these media availabilities with these YOLO boxes. And then like everybody around the world can tune into YouTube and like see like Nick Suzuki talking about whatever the game that night. You could hear Marty St. Louis talk about the game that night, his strategies, his thoughts, like instantly. So
crazy.
Whereas back in the day in 2011 when I started, we would film it on a Sony EX1 with those big cards, and then take those, upload it into Premiere, cut it, export it, send it to the web, and then they would upload it.
Actually, you're forgetting. We used to use Final Cut and have to transcode it.
Yes, exactly.
Imagine.
Speaking of evolving, like what's your future like? Do you see yourself staying the Canadiens like Lance for half your life, or do you have like goals and as far as sports videography is concerned? Is there other things that you'd like to maybe not quit the Canadiens to just like move on to something else, but something you'd like to do outside of, or even with the Canadiens, whatever it is?
It's a good question. Like another passion of mine is like landscape photography, and I started this job at 22, so I was a very like young kid, and like I guess as time goes on, you learn about yourself, you learn more about what you love, what you don't love, what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and like over the last, I would say 7 years, maybe 10, whatever, I this is gonna sound weird because this is total left field, but like I just developed like a love for animals, like wildlife and stuff like that, and I just became like obsessed with like documentaries. Like if you guys were to speak with my girlfriend right now, she'd be like, all he does is watch documentaries on like a lion attacking like a gazelle or something like that, you know, like like she'll watch it the first time, but like after the third or fourth time, she's like, okay, Shafique, like I think you know, so like I'd love to dabble in that kind of stuff. I don't know in what capacity, but like right now as a landscape photographer, anytime I go out to like trips and stuff like that, I bring my camera and I take photos during like golden hour. So that's either like sunrise or sunsets and stuff, try to get the best colors. And I learn a lot from other photographers and stuff. But I think that helps me in my main job too, because it just gets my like mind off of the main thing. Like the main thing's no longer the main thing, and I just get to have like fun still with like camera and stuff like that, but in a different sense. It also takes a different kind of eye to shoot photography, and then even another kind of eye to get like wildlife and stuff like that. And I've dabbled in that a bit in Banff. I shot, I took photos of like a couple wildlife just out there, and like being with like pro wildlife photographers, learning from them, the distances and understanding the animal itself, what times it comes out, what time is it harder to get them, that kind of stuff. So I'm very interested in that stuff, and I kind of wish I would have went into like a biology class or something, like growing up, like in university or something.
Still
like,
take one. There's still time.
Yeah,
Still young.
guess, yeah. But I see a lot of these places. You need to have like a base of like biology and stuff like that. But in a dream world, it would be like National Geographic or something like that. Actually, one of my photos was published in the Canadian Geographic magazine, which was pretty cool. They reached out to me on Instagram and they asked me like, "Hey, do you mind if we feature your photo in the magazine?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" Like, so that kind of stuff I think would be cool.
Do you get a lot of people reaching out to you on your socials about like either your photos or about working for the Habs?
Mostly my photos, mostly photos work. I've had a few people like with the Habs and stuff, like how can I get a job there and this and stuff, and I would just forward them the information to contact like the HR department and stuff like that, send them your reel, this type of stuff. But I would say mostly like my photography, I get people reaching out.
So if you had a chance to talk to the 22-year-old Shafique that replaced E back in the day, what would you tell him about your journey so far?
Oh man, that's a tough question. What would I tell Shafique? I would tell him that's such a tough question. I would tell him like be patient, like everything works out, I guess. I remember coming in as a 22-year-old and I wanted to do everything. But like you need time, to develop. And if I would have done everything as a 22-year-old, it probably wouldn't be good, like. So I would say like patience probably, and everything works out in the end.
Oh, that's good. There's actually a question I wanted to ask Lance at the beginning, and I forgot. Were you were you involved in hiring Shafique? Like, were you consulted? Like,
were you consulted?
I was shown some of his stuff, but I didn't really have a final say because I was doing Habs TV that summer because you weren't there, and there was a void, right? But I was still doing all the Evenco stuff, so I saw Shafique's stuff come in that, and he was a candidate that stuck out for me. But I didn't have a final say or nothing like that. I just kind of, Paul showed me, "Oh, what do you think of this video?" I said, "Oh, that one's pretty good." And then I still remember him coming in because our offices were under renovation at the time. So we were in Salle AB, it was called. It was a big conference room. And it was just a big table. I remember Shafique coming in and he had a computer set up beside me. And that's where we started, getting to know each other. And I remember helping him out on some projects and doing a little training with him and that. And then slowly, he was off on his own. And then I was just there for guidance when he had, problems at work or problems in life or there. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember, like, I think it was my first 2 weeks or something like that. I was freaking out because, like, I never really used Photoshop before. Do you remember this, Lance? And, like, there was a project that required Photoshop. And I looked at Lance and I'm like, dude, I don't know how to, like, it was the first moment that, like, I felt like I shouldn't, like, I felt almost embarrassed to, like, say, like, I didn't know something. Yeah, exactly. And, like, Lance was so chill about it. He's like, don't worry about it. Like, you do this, you do that. Like, and I was like, okay, cool. But I remember that first day, he was always, like, helpful and didn't make you feel like like embarrassed or whatever. Like it was always open communication to learning, basically.
Yeah, because we're a team, right? Like, yes, there's a team on the ice, but we are the team behind the scenes, right? So if you had an issue with a project or there's something, no one had all the answers. So if you had an issue with the project, someone was always there to help you out. I try and help you out. If I couldn't, we'd figure out a way. Okay, if I don't know the answer, how are we going to figure this out? And we'd always found the solution. And it was fun, like, because sometimes you would come with problems that I didn't know how to solve, and I was like, oh shit, okay, well, let's figure this out, buddy. So we sit down and we figure out a way and make sure your project looked good and make sure that the final product was good.
Yeah,
but it was fun. Like we had a good setup too. We were 4 guys in a tight space. We all had our own offices all beside each other, but we'd open the door and we'd have communications, or we'd get instant feedback right away on projects, and we know what was working, what wasn't working. New stuff is coming out. Like our friend Joe, he was a gearhead. He was always looking at the new cameras coming out. We need this, we need that. And we'd always ask him, why do we need that? And he always had some reason why we need to spend the money and get that new camera and get this. And
all creatives, it's a bit like that, like all the time. Like you sort of, every time someone's stuck for whatever, whether it's a technical issue or a creative sort of, like you remember yourself being in that situation multiple times, and you're just happy to sort of help someone else sort of get out of it.
The technical issues that I've had over the career with cameras, and I was just telling you about technology and stuff, it's just like when I see somebody else struggling and I see me in them feeling that, oh my God, like this is embarrassing. Like it feels so good to just go up to that person and be like, dude, I've been here. You're going to be okay. This is what you do. Don't worry about it. Like
I remember being at a press conference and the guy next to me like freaking out because he only has like 3% left on his battery. I'm like, here, like take this one. He's like, oh, thank you so much.
One last question. Okay, Shafique. What was your aha moment? Whether it was you met a celebrity through the Bell Center, what was that moment where you're like, wow, and you just tried to get yourself to enjoy that moment, even though you're behind the camera?
Jennifer Lopez. That was my aha moment, man. Lance had a gig with AEG, I think at the time, to cover J-Lo and Enrique concert when they came for the world tour, and he gave it to me, man. Like he's just like, here, you could do it. You love this stuff, you go do it. And like I remember being at the rehearsal, and like J-Lo was right there, and like I just couldn't believe it. Like she was in sweats and she still looked amazing, and I was just like, oh my God, like I'm filming J-Lo, like, and so that was the biggest aha moment. The other aha moment that I had, because I didn't grow up watching hockey, so like don't take this the wrong way, but like the hockey players that I'm around, like I don't look at them as like, oh my God,
It's not like your childhood hero.
Exactly. Like a lot of people do. And I think that helped me in my career, to just be very distant to them. Because if I worked in the NBA and I was like around Kobe Bryant, I would not be able to, I probably wouldn't, like just recently I was on the road in Colorado, and both the Memphis Grizzlies and the Phoenix Suns were staying in the same hotel. And I was feeling giddy, man. I was feeling like I was in the elevator with Bradley Beal, and I was like, oh my God, this is Bradley Beal. Crazy. Like, and I saw John Moran eating, and I was like, anyways, so the other aha moment was seeing the commentators that I grew up listening to. So I think it was 2017, the NBA Canada came to the Bell Center, and Jack Armstrong was there.
Hello.
And I crossed him, and I was like, oh my God, like I was a big Raptors fan. Like I grew up watching Raptors. Like this is the voice that I've been listening to since I was a 12-year-old boy, and I was just like, damn. I almost got like what's that word, like celebrity shock, not celebrity shock,
like starstruck.
Yeah, I was starstruck. I was like, holy crap. Like him and Paul Jones was there too, so it's just like those were the two moments I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
I remember we watched that J-Lo footage a lot.
Yeah, crazy, insane. What a performer though. Like she's so professional. Doesn't matter who's around her, whether it was her dancer, lighting technician, whatever. Like she was so nice to everybody. So I was like, that was also like an eye opener, you know, because you read magazines, you watch TV, ET news, whatever. Sometimes you think these people are like too famous to recognize people, you know. But to see her like be a human, I was just like, oh wow, this is really cool. Once in a lifetime thing, man.
And you know what it is too? Like I worked with like NBA players at some point, and after like I was in Australia, so I was used to playing with just lower level guys who are probably still a bit sort of like doing like media day stuff and a bit, you know, awkward around doing things that they weren't super comfortable doing. But when I worked with the NBA guys, they were so easy to sort of follow direction. Like they trusted me 100%. And it sort of felt like they know that they're the best at what they do. And they understand that other people, like if that's what I do, then I must be the best at what I do. So like they just sort of trust you completely. And I felt like, and that was like really only with sort of top level guys that I got that like that feeling, like, because I'm obviously coming in like super intimidated and trying to hide it. But then I realized, oh shit, like they're just like really letting me lead and they'll do whatever I ask. And I was like, oh yeah, this is actually going to be pretty easy. And like, I don't feel bad asking for like one more thing or can you do it again this way? Or it was just like easy.
Most people we do film, even though they're famous or athletes and that, they are normal people. It's just they're in the spotlight. But when you get them to one-on-one situations and you're miking them up or filming them, 9 out of 10 times, they're pretty enjoyable people. There's no issues. It's just the public doesn't always get to see that part. We get to see it behind camera, but even when you press record, that doesn't always portray on your video.
I don't know if that's like a facade that these players try to put or what, but like I've been in those situations where it's like, well, I'm with this guy right now. He's super chill. It's nothing like what the population thinks about or is saying about him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He doesn't look like that on TMZ.
Yeah.
Listen, Shafique, thank you so much for being on this episode of Game Day Glare, man, and we'll definitely have to have you back again because we only scratched the surface. I mean, there's a lot more stories. There's a lot more stuff that goes into what being a pro videographer is. But I'm just happy that you and E finally got to meet each other because this was 13 years in the making.
Yeah, crazy, man. It was a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me, and E, it's nice to meet you. Hopefully we can all get together soon.
Yeah, isn't that the plan? I think I spoke to Paul the other day. Like I think we're supposed to.
Oh yeah,
supposed to have lunch or something.
Yeah,
nice.
Get the old band back together.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, guys. Ciao.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See ya.